Welcome to the East Bank Sports Show, proudly brought to you by the Fanatical Elves, a member of the Fans First Sports Network. Broadcasting live from the vibrant East Bank of the Flats in Cleveland, Ohio. Join us as we delve into the heart of Cleveland sports. It's your hosts, Noah and Matt.
Cleveland, welcome into the East Bank Sports Show, the show where we talk all things Cleveland sports. I am your host, Noah Olson, with my good old buddy pal here, Matt Pulitzer. Matt, how we doing, man?
Not too bad. I'm good.
I feel you. I'm getting excited for these Monday night matchups because Lord knows the Browns are not giving us anything to be excited about. You were talking about some fantasy implications before we hopped on live. Let's talk some fantasy football real quick because I have some implications on the night too, but I want to hear yours first before we get into the nitty-gritty of today's topics.
I mean, right now, in my big league, sitting on like a 3-point lead with Jahmyr Gibbs yet to go for me, and got that man Tyreek Hill going up against me tonight. I'm a little worried, to be honest.
Tyler Huntley at quarterback for Tyreek Hill. It is going to be an interesting one for sure. I have a side bet on a game tonight, and it all comes down to Seattle's kicker. I am up 10 points right now, and on the side bet, if I win, I get myself a nice, pristine bottle of Crown Apple. But if I lose, I owe my boy Kyle at work a bottle of Tito's. $30 value on the line. I want me some Crown to go on my bar cart. So let's go Lions. So that way they don't have to kick any field goals or extra points whatsoever. I want a big old 0 there and a nice bottle of Crown on my desk tomorrow morning. Matt, we've had a little bit of fun. It's time to get into our feels today. We have to talk about the 1-3 Cleveland Browns. They looked horrible yet again for the 4th week in a row in Las Vegas, not in prime time because nobody wanted to watch that game. They gave everybody in the U.S. basically the Kansas City Chargers game, except us poor Browns fans who had to watch that monstrosity on the field. Browns fall to 1-3. What are your biggest takeaways from the loss to the Raiders, Matt? I want to hear one of yours first. Then we'll go through some of the big plays, that kind of thing.
I mean, listen, I'm just over it, you know. I think it's time I go and support a winning team. So I'm just going to start talking about the Lake Erie Monsters, you know. They went to the conference finals. They have a top prospect organization. I mean, everything about them is looking great and on the ups. So, you know, let's go Monsters.
I forgot you were going to do that little bit. I would have worn my Monsters jersey instead of this damn Browns gear for the show today, but that's okay. We'll be all right. You know, there's a lot of key errors that I noticed from this game. The first being the Dustin Hop. Well, not the first, just in the order of my list I have written down here. The first being the DeAndre Hopkins. Did I just say DeAndre? Dustin Hopkins missed field goal after we get the scoop and score for 6. The Amari drop that he fumbles up and basically turns into a pick for Deshaun Watson. The Harris hold. Matt, I want to know, do you think that play was a hold?
I think they called it a hold.
Do you think it was a true hold, though?
I mean, looking at it in replay, yeah, he grabbed the jersey there at the end. But was it quick enough that it's one of those things that it just random? I don't think it should have been called. 99% of the times it's not called.
That's where I'm at.
That's where 100% slow-mo, though. I mean, you see he does grab and tug the jersey, but you see that every play. Like, it's unfortunate that it got called is basically what it boils down to in my mind.
Yeah, coming from the O-line perspective, like that's the type of stuff you really do probably, 75 to 80% of the plays you're out there. It's unfortunate it gets caught on that one, but some of the plays that you see and I'm not even talking about Myles Garrett, I'm talking TJ Watt, Micah Parsons, these star edge players where they're getting manhandled to the ground and bear hugged and this, that, and the other, and they're not getting called for holding because of the stature. But Nick Harris, who is an undersized backup center, gets called on a holding call on a game-changing play. It's unfortunate. It's ticky-tacky. Was it a hold? I'm not going to sit here and be like, no, it wasn't a hold flat out. He did grab the jersey. There was extension, which is part of the holding procedure, the holding call and how that works. it's just unfortunate, and it happens sometimes in the NFL. It just feels like it happens to Cleveland all the time, and that's kind of my salty take for the day, I guess. Another thing I noticed, especially with Miles playing limited snaps, there was not a lot of penetration from the backup D line, and even when there was, we were missing so many tackles, and not missing them and getting them to stumble, like going for the hit stick and completely whiffing and letting 32nd ranked, I believe, rushing attack rush all over the field on us. Matt, what else are you thinking from this game, man?
I mean, kind of circling back to the Nick Harris hold. And I mean, again, we just went over how, you can get ticky-tacky with that or whatever. But I think that really highlights one of the bigger problems that Cleveland Browns have had this year. And the offensive line struggles have been absolutely killer. I mean, I'm not one to sit here and, point fingers to one thing that's causing us to lose football games we shouldn't. But if you're not sitting here saying that's top two, if not the biggest issue we have, I mean, you're crazy. It looks like a horribly coached unit that doesn't know what they're doing. They can't pick up the simple stuff at times. It's been nothing but problems all year. And I get injuries too are a big factor in that. But it's the NFL. You're professionals. You got to step up and play the way you should. That's the whole name of the game.
Yeah, I'm with you. And you can even double back on this. And, a portion of this does fall back on the O-line and their poor effort, poor play all game. I mean, Deshaun Watson was even yelling at DeJuan Jones at one point. For anybody who is mad about that, honestly, I like seeing some sort of fire in this team. We haven't seen anything like that out of anybody. Normally, Deshaun's over there with the towel on his head. Normally, we're just moping around the sideline. So I'm glad we got a little bit of fire on the field and after off the field as well. But what I was going to say there is the running game has looked awful in general, which again comes on the offensive line, but the backs looked horrible this week. I mean, Foreman had 4 carries for like 2 yards. I know we've been pounding the drum of get Foreman more carries, but every time we did, he was standing straight up by the time he made it back to the line, whether that's on the offensive line or not. I can only say so much. There's times we need playmakers to be playmakers. It's hard. I get it. 10 carries for Ford, 58 yards, but one of the carries was a 35-yard carry in the last drive of the game for the Browns. The run game is the biggest issue here. We can point fingers all day at the quarterback, and yes, he has had some horrible play. His QBR throughout the year is at a 23.8 right now. But when you cannot keep the defense honest with your run game, there's no point in this passing game to even try anything other than play action and RPOs all day. There's just nothing. There's no gel on this offense, and it's frustrating. And we go through this conversation every week now since the first week. It's just I don't get what the fix is, and I've decided today. The answer is not to come up here and say what the fix is, because there's a plethora of problems with this team. But it's to point out what's wrong, see what they can fix, and maybe point out some other answers too. Matt, what else are you thinking from this game?
One thing that really stuck out to me was the way our secondary played. It seemed like, they always come with an energy of, they know they're better. Those 3 corners, they just know they're better. And they're going to let you know it by how they play. And this week specifically, but this year in general, it's just they've been playing off, they've been playing soft, they've been giving up the 8-yard reception, which is fine when you come up and make the tackle right after it. But like you talked about for a minute earlier, we're not making tackles either. So that 8-yard turns into 17 yards.
I'm glad Denzel Ward's healthy, because he's the only secondary player that looks like he has, played a good game this year. You know what I mean? Even in this loss, he played a good game. It's like they lose one safety and the whole secondary falls apart. And he's only out for a couple weeks, and I get that. But we lose one starting safety, and it's like the whole thing has gone awry at this point. Matt, I want to ask you, what else are you thinking? What else is sticking out to you? The missed tackles are the biggest thing. The whiffs are the biggest thing for me on the defense. but you can point the finger at the defense. They still scored points and came up after having a horrible first half. So what else are you thinking from this game? If you're wrapped up, we can move on to what's next, basically.
I mean, I get just the short concern that's starting to brew in my head, and I'm just now connecting the dots as of recently. Is, again, I hate to kick them while they're down, and it seems like all we're doing is attacking them today, but coming back to our O-line issue, it seems like it's progressively gotten worse in the years since our O-line coach Bob Wiley left.
I'm going to challenge you on that. Not since Bob Wiley, it's since Callahan went with his kid, the guy from last year. They've also gotten older, but continue.
I don't disagree with that. And like I was saying, this is me connecting the dots a few minutes before the show even. I haven't put a lot of thought into this, but it seems like it's been on a progressive downhill over the past couple years. And it's finally getting to a point where it's bad enough that the fans are actually starting to be like, holy cow, what's going on here?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem is this O-line is getting older and we haven't done much to replenish it because it's been so good. And now we're here with a lot of injuries and it's like, well, what do we do? And the problem is the season has already started and there's no trade out there that's going to magically fix the O-line. You can get some backup that might be better than, the guys that have been out there so far. But even then, it's only putting a Band-Aid on a problem that ultimately isn't going to get fixed unless we draft or sign or trade in the offseason when some of these players become more available. Matt, I'm going to take us to break real quick. When we come back, we're going to talk about the upcoming game against the Commanders, and then we're going to have a good time when we wrap up this show because the Guardians play playoff baseball this week. And we focus on the Browns, and there's a reason. It's a popular team in Cleveland, but the Guardians need some love, and I'm ready to watch some playoff baseball this week. You're listening to the East Bank Sports Show. We'll be right back after this commercial break. And we are back with the East Bank Sports Show. Just a quick reminder, really helps us out if you hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on YouTube, or, the follow button. Our ats are on the screen right now. Really helps us. Make sure you hit the download button as well. If you are listening via the podcast methods, through the Fanatical Elves, through Fans First Sports Network, shout out both of those channels because they are the reason we do what we do and can do what we do. But Matt, I have a lot of stats and stuff I want to talk about. There's no true answer in my mind for all the problems on this Browns team. But I want to move on to next week a little bit. I want to talk Browns versus Commanders preview, go through some of the stuff that I've seen. But let's start on a positive note real quick. I want to bring up two guys that are practicing this week. So, Matt, give me the good news.
I mean, the one that I think is going to help this offense a lot, and we've been waiting on for a while, is, well, not a while now, but since, week 2, is Njoku's finally going to be back at practice this week. And that's going to be a massive improvement and a big help, I think.
I think that's going to be huge for this team. I think he was schemed to do a lot in this offense this year, and that's, been part of the many problems that we mentioned before we went to break. But the other one, of course, the most popular, the one that was floating around X and floating around Instagram and everywhere where people, read opinions and sports talk and all of that, Nick Chubb is returning to practice on Wednesday for the first time since that gruesome, nasty, ugly injury against the Steelers in week 2 of last year. I know we all miss Chubb, so I'm just excited to at least have that bright spot before we go back to talking about what I have to talk about. I have a trivia question for you, Matt. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
When was the last time Deshaun Watson threw for 100 or over 300 yards?
2017 with the Texans?
Well, that would have been his rookie year. The actual answer is the 2021 playoffs with the Texans, I believe. That was the last time he threw for 20 or over 300 yards. That is sad to me. And I'm not agenda setting here because I want to make it very abundantly clear that Deshaun Watson was not the problem in the loss to the Las Vegas Raiders. He did everything and then some. He would have been over 200 yards with 2 touchdowns if everything goes the way for the offense. You know what I mean, Matt? And I'm not pulling back on any of the Deshaun Watson hate, but in this particular game, this was not a Deshaun Watson problem per se, in my opinion. What about you?
No, I actually agree with that, and I wanted to bring that up at some point. As much as I've been a vocal Deshaun Watson hater, he wasn't the problem this week. Granted, I'm still of the standpoint that he's supposed to be the player that gets us over these problems.
Oh, and I agree with that 100%. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to pull back on the he's not worth $230 million and I haven't seen it yet. All I'm saying is there's a million other ways to look this week, and I'm not pulling out the Deshaun Watson facts as a let's bench Deshaun Watson or get rid of Deshaun Watson. You'll see what I'm getting at here in a second. So I want to talk about Brown's offensive passing stats. Jarrell here on the network has been mentioning this a few times in his own shows when he came and visited on our shows. What do you think the highest ranked passing offense that Kevin Stefanski has had? What do you think that number is, like ranking wise out of 32?
Probably, I mean, if I had to guess, mid to upper 20s.
The highest he had was last year, 19th for the entire season. That was with Deshaun Watson, PJ Walker, DTR, Joe Flacco, all starting at one point for the Cleveland Browns. Going through this, in 2020, he was 24 with the hurt Baker not the hurt Baker Mayfield. That was the playoff year with Baker Mayfield. 2021, the hurt Baker Mayfield, 27th. I don't think that really surprised anybody. 2022, he was 21st. That was the Deshaun Watson suspended, majority Jacoby Brissett starting year. But it is of note that they were averaging like just around 200 yards a game. When Jacoby was playing, he only had one game under 200 yards and 237 yards of average. Still puts them at the middle of the pack. If Jacoby finished out that season, it would have been like 14-15. But, you know, an improvement compared to the 2 Baker years. You then go to 23, like I said, 19th with all the different starting quarterbacks. Joe Flacco, though, had a 323-yard average, which would have, you know, if he played at that clip for the whole year, it obviously would have been first. But even if he cooled off 75 yards, you know what I mean? He had that 5-game boom, and then he stayed between, 2 and 250 for the rest of the year. It still would have been a top 5 passing offense. And then this year, of course, we are 30th in passing offense with Deshaun Watson's 23.8 QBR. So I bring up all of this to say and to pose a question, and I'm not taking a side here because I've been a Kevin Stefanski defender through and through. Dorsey, in his full season with the Bills, and granted he had Josh Allen, was ranked 7th in passing in 2022. Again, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, I get it. But when you're talking about the quality of players and what you're expecting to see on the field, I pose the question, Matt, what do those numbers tell you?
It tells me that we have the wrong guy calling our offense.
I am not at a point where I know what the answers are anymore, as I've said a couple times on this show. But I am getting ever so more closely to the point of what's it going to hurt to let Dorsey take a stab at calling these plays. You brought him in for a reason. He has experience with a quarterback, more of Deshaun's stature. I know, Josh Allen was a taller quarterback, had more. They're not the same quarterback by any means, but we're talking about a guy that will run sometimes, a guy that isn't a true pro pocket passer like a Jacoby or Joe Flacco were when they thrived in Kevin Stefanski's offense. I don't know, man. I think it might just be time to give it a shot. Why not, right?
I mean, it can't hurt anything. I don't think I mean, at times our play calling has been okay this year, but at no point have I been like, wow, great play calling. And there have been a lot of times I've been like, what are we doing here? So even if
Yeah.
I just spend a lot of time with Dorsey calling plays going, what are we doing here? It's, par for the course. No harm, no foul.
And, we talked about it in the preseason too, thinking that, oh, maybe he's going to give it up because we brought in, I don't want to call Dorsey like a big name free agency hire by any means, because he did get fired by the Bills, but I'm of the belief that he was the scapegoat for the Bills' struggles last year, as opposed to being the problem of that offense. Obviously, having a 7th overall passing offense is nothing to sniff at, considering we have never had that under Coach Kevin Stefanski. But then it also gets hard, and I'm going to play devil's advocate for a second. Then you think, 2 coaches of Coach of the Years. We've been to the playoffs 2 times and almost made a good run despite some bad calling in a Kansas City game in his, first year. Like, there's a lot here where you can go back and be like, well, maybe we should keep Stefanski where he's at, because it's given us the most success we've seen as young Browns fans, right, Matt?
There's definitely some weight to that. I mean, my stance has always been, though, is he's a great leader, horrible play caller. And I think that's getting highlighted this year. And now with, even how undisciplined this team looks, I'm starting to question how great of a leader and again, you flip the script real quick there and you have a 2-time coach of the year that took us to the playoffs for the first time in forever. There's a lot to love about this dude.
It's such a tricky, thought process in general with all of this. Do you think his seat's hot? Do you think his seat's warm at this point already?
I mean, at some point, if we keep this up, it's got to get warm. I don't think it's quite there yet. But if we don't, I'm getting to the point where if we don't rattle off 3 wins in a row here, and I feel like everybody's going to kind of agree with me, even now at 1-3, we could start to call the playoffs a long shot on this year.
Yeah, there was a statistic, and I don't always subscribe to this because so much can happen in the NFL, but when you're 1-3, you're already at a 29% chance of making the playoffs or something like that 4 games into the season. When you think about that, that's daunting, but you've seen teams go, like the Steelers, for example, in the year that we beat them in the playoffs, they went 11-0 and then proceeded to lose every game after that and do absolutely nothing. So the NFL is so volatile and can switch between what's going on and what, so it doesn't exactly equate in my mind. And I don't subscribe to those statistics by actual, oh, well, we're screwed, wrap up the season or whatever. But it's just, yeah, I'm with you. I don't think his seat is completely warm yet. I think Jimmy is playing with the lighter in Tennessee somewhere, thinking about lighting the seat on fire. But maybe they could. We keep saying, who knows? Maybe they'll turn it around this week. And speaking of this week, let's talk for a minute the Washington game in detail. I know we were talking through some of that kind of stuff, but I want to talk to you about what you think is going to happen with this game.
You want my honest thought?
Yeah, I do.
I'm going to have spiked my Browns jersey at the floor before halftime and switch the channel to a different game. It's going to be horrible. It's going to be ugly. Browns fans are not going to want to tune into this one.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a little bit of credit because rookie quarterbacks against traditionally good defenses. Now, I'm not saying they've been a great defense this year. We didn't see them play great defense this last game. Rookie quarterbacks tend to falter a little bit when you got people like Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, JOK on the other side of the ball. I think there's a good chance that the Browns still, play a competitive game here. I still think there's a good chance the Browns can win and rally and do that kind of thing. The problem is, what team is going to show up on Sunday? Is it going to be the team that had a fire last year, or is it going to be the team that looks sluggish, like they don't care as much, that we've seen to this point this year? The Browns open as 3.5-point underdogs. The matchup predictor for ESPN has us at a 37% chance of winning. Obviously, we all know the big injuries. Hopefully, we see one of our starting tackles back. Lord knows at this point, Martin Emerson left the game with a concussion, by the way. They say head injury. It was a concussion. So Lord knows if we'll get him back in a week or not. Probably not, knowing how tight the concussion rules are now. They don't have anything crazy out. They have a starting safety, I believe, but that's about it for next week. And Jalen Daniels has been playing fantastic football, point blank period. So the point of emphasis is to shut that man down, and we'll see what we can do from there. No score predictions this week because I don't feel comfortable. And again, no parlays either because I don't have it in me. I'm taking a break from sports betting as it is for this week and maybe next, but I just don't have it in me to bet on the Browns at all until I see some sort of improvement on the field. Are you with me, Matt?
I'm 100% there. You can't put money in them on good faith. You can't.
I'm with you. Matt, I would say this has been fun but it really hasn't because we're just complaining again for the 5th week in a row, 4th week in a row, whatever. Let's move on to something happy, something I'm really excited to talk about. Your jersey, for those watching, the Cleveland Guardians, playoff baseball this week. What are your thoughts?
I mean, the first one is, I kind of talked about it every time we've brought up the Guards in about the last month, is, that ball is starting to roll. Granted, we ended the year not so hot, but looking at the way the team was playing, not the result of the games, I think we look ready for postseason baseball. And like I was kind of getting at last week, and like I'm going to double down on it this week, I like us against anybody in the AL except the team that took the 1 seed from us. I still like the series there, but that's a good roster. Anybody else, I think we beat them.
Yeah, I want to get into some of the nitty gritty here. So obviously the Guardians are skipping the wild card. They got the bye. So we have 2 potential teams we can be playing. Both we're kind of familiar with because we ended the season in a series with one, and the other is from our division. So let's talk about it for a second. It's the Astros and the Tigers, for those of you who don't know. The Astros finished the season 88-73. Jordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve, Kyle Tucker, Justin Verlander, just some of the notable names on that roster. Tigers finished 86-76, end the season really hot. Get to that in a second. Tariq Skubal, Cy Young front runner, even though it should be Emmanuel Clase. Spencer Torkelson is a name that is known, broader in MLB, even though he's, gotten down a little bit in terms of his play. And Kerry Carpenter, the leading batter for the Tigers as of right now in terms of batting percentage. The last 20 games for the Astros, 12-8. They've been okay. They've been, just about average. The Tigers, however, have been on fire. That's how they got to this point. They are 15-5 in their last 20. And, that scares me just a little bit. And I'm going to ask you who you want to play in a second and some of your other thoughts. Wrapping up what else I have written down here. The Guardians versus Astros this season are only 1-4 in the regular season series. So that isn't really, heartwarming in terms of a full series, but you never know. The playoffs are a completely different animal. And the Guardians actually have a series lead against the Tigers in the regular season, 7-6, which isn't what you want to hear, but it's better than nothing. And then overall, Astros versus Tigers in their own series from the season, the Astros lead of the Tigers 4-2. Obviously, with the Astros having the higher seeding, they're the favorite to win and go on and play us. But Matt, I open the floor and ask you, who do you want to play?
The answer has to be Detroit. There's reasons to go either way for sure, like you were just getting at. But even extending this to years prior, back to when we had a different name that I don't think I'm allowed to say anymore, and Houston's always killed us. They've always been Cleveland killers. It's something they've made money doing. I really don't want to see them in the postseason, and I think even if I'm letting prior life experiences play a factor, you gotta want Detroit. It's a worse roster on paper, and the history looks a lot better for us.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'd rather have Detroit. It scares me a little bit because they've been so hot and they've also been fun to watch. I was honestly cheering for them because I hate the Twins so much. Um, and I wanted them to not make it. Sorry, Twins fans, not really. Suck it. Anyway, um, I am with you. I think on paper, I mean, the Astros are just a more talented team, regardless of, records and how close they are to Detroit. I'd rather play Detroit. I still have confidence in my Gardos to win, the ALDS and move on at least one round. So we'll see. I lean towards wanting Detroit too, but I think either way, it's not going to be an easy ALDS for us. You know what I mean?
The other thing too that I want to throw out there is I think specifically because of the situation of the way the wild card rounds work, I do believe, even no matter what the experts say, there's a good shot we get Detroit. I think Detroit can win this series. I mean, like you mentioned earlier, Tariq Skubal, Cy Young winner. In my mind, you trot him out there game one, it's pretty much going to guarantee Detroit a game one win. He is the best pitcher in the league this year. I mean, I see the Astros lineup doing damage potentially, but he's so good. So that's one game of a 3-game series you win. Then you got to take 1 and 2, and one of those is at home. Detroit's hot, like you were getting at. I think there's a realistic shot we see Detroit. I would pick them over Houston, I think.
You're a betting man. You're putting your money where your mouth is, and you're betting Detroit. Okay. I'm excited to watch some playoff baseball this week, especially in between, all the football that we've been going on. I almost, as much of a football lover as I am, need like a mental health break from the sport of football in terms of being a fan, because it has been so taxing to watch the Cleveland Browns, as we have said earlier in the podcast. Matt, what else are you thinking for the Guards? You got anything else on your mind? Oh, who do you think is going to be the starting pitchers for the Guards first 3 games of this series? Obviously, number one's Bybee. Go ahead from there.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously number one, don't even need to touch it. I think number 2, you got to give the nod to Gavin. He hasn't been, super dominant or anything this year, but we know what he can do, and I think he's the second best pitcher on our roster. Then at number 3, I was super torn between putting Cantillo at 3, but I think you got to go with Matthew Boyd. He's looked very impressive in all of his starts this year. But, I mean, like I was just saying, I'm not mad if Joey trots out there for a game at all.
I'm with you. I think the starting pitching situation is going to be interesting because of how much we're going to rely on this bullpen for this series, for this playoff run. Hopefully, I think that's really what it comes down to in terms of pitching, is how well and how positive the bullpen can play throughout the playoffs. Is if they could keep up the momentum that they've had all year, being one of, if not the best bullpen in the MLB. I think that is really what this comes down to. But, a good Bybee start, a good Gavin start, just to get the thing rolling. I'm not complaining, man. That's all I'm saying. Yeah, I'm excited for Guards baseball. Next time we hop on the show, we'll be able to talk, some more baseball, actually break down what has happened in these games. Obviously, we have been kind of sitting back waiting for the season to wrap up. But it's time to talk more baseball, because that is the brightest of bright spots here in Cleveland. Matt, I want to move to final thoughts and takes, wrap this thing up so we can go watch some Monday Night Football. You cool with that, my man?
I think so.
All right, let's do the thing. Final thoughts and take. What else is on your mind, Matt? What's your final thought for the people today before we wrap this show up?
I'm doubling down on what I said early in the episode. I know some people might be upset to hear it, but they also need to hear it. The Monsters are winning the championship this year. It's a great roster. They're gonna do it.
Let's go Sweezy. That's the only name I can remember from the few games I went with my girlfriend last year. And I think I brought my parents to one too, actually. Shout out the part-time employee tickets. Super dope to go to Monsters game for free, especially when the lower bowl is always open, because It is minor league hockey after all. But since we're talking, indoor sports, that dirty, nasty winter time is coming, so comes one of my favorite sports, basketball. And I believe it was today. If not, it was yesterday. No, it was today because it's Monday. Today was Cavs Media Day. And I just want to say I love Donovan Mitchell because he is doubling, tripling, quadrupling down on the Cleveland love. He called Cleveland his home today. He said, I knew in February and January that I was going to resign here. It was just a matter of getting through all the motions and that kind of thing. Donovan Mitchell is the face of Cleveland basketball. And if you don't like it, well, then I got 2 words for you. That one was for all my wrestling fans. I'm not going to say the rest because we like to keep it PG here. Anyway, Matt, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Anything else you want to say to the people before I send this thing home? No, you're good?
Good to go.
All right, man. It's been a pleasure. Everybody, thank you for tuning in live. Thank you for watching after the fact on YouTube. Wherever you download your podcast, please hit that download button. Again, helps us grow a ton. And until next time, Cleveland, I want to make sure you have a great rest of your day. Stay safe out there. There's been some crazy stuff going on in the streets of Cleveland. I don't know if you saw about some of those riots that were happening near the airport, I believe, which was crazy. And stay happy. There's things to be happy about, even though the Browns have been making all of us on the timeline pretty sad. The Guardians play baseball. Show up, show out. Come downtown and support. Come have a beer. Why not? Till next time, Cleveland, we will see you. Thank you for tuning in to the East Bank Sports Show.